Yo, what's going on, boys? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to this new video. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new Prismatic Hunter build that's only possible thanks to this season's mods and also some of the recent buffs that happened with Heresy. That essentially lets you have 3 different exotics on the Prismatic class, and it just feels amazing. With this build, we're going to be using so many things on the Prismatic kit. We're going to have invisibility, damage resistance, amplified, jolt, radiant, sever, volatile rounds. You pretty much get the point. We're going to be using a lot of things and really making the most out of Prismatic. And if you're someone that loves builds that are all about spamming abilities and just chaining your abilities with each other, then you're going to love this build. And if you guys end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel in case you guys aren't already for some more builds. So let's get into it, and the very first thing that we're going to start with is going to be our exotics. They're very important to the build, so that's the first thing we're looking at. So first of all, for our exotic weapon, today we're using the Bastion, and for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it's a fusion rifle, so you can take advantage of particle deconstruction, and it also has built-in unstoppable, so you don't even have to use the mod to make this thing unstoppable. It's just naturally unstoppable. And the final reason is because of its exotic perk, which essentially uses Trench Barrel, but for a fusion rifle. Whenever we land a successful melee hit, we gain increased damage, reduced charge time, and also increased reload for a short period of time. And if we land a full burst of the Bastion, it also increases our melee damage. So melee damage increases damage, and it actually increases melee damage. And since we're going to be spamming tons of abilities, we're going to be able to proc this a lot. And our ranged melees are actually able to proc this. So even if we just throw a shuriken at something, it's going to be able to proc this and give us that sweet 50% increased damage. So it's quite a big damage bump. Now for our exotic piece of armor, we are going to be on the exotic class item, and this is going to be the way that we're going to get our first 2 exotic perks. Now for the exotic perks we want to have on this thing, the only must have of the 2 is going to have to be Spirit of Inmost Light. Whenever you use an ability, it empowers the other 2 abilities, granting them increased ability regen, allowing you essentially to be able to spam your abilities faster. You essentially just chain one ability after another, just always getting your abilities back faster. So that's why Inmost Light is the most important. Usually we can chain abilities on each other and basically never have any downtime on just the ability spam we're going to be doing. Now for your second perk, most of them will actually work. The second perk doesn't really matter as much as the first one, but the best ones for sure are going to be Coyote, so you can get a second class ability charge, so you can just use it a lot more often. Set Arachne, so you can get Woven Mail whenever you get your grenade, just adding a bit more survivability to the build. Star Eaters is pretty good, so you can put some more damage behind your super. And then also the Centoceps are also going to be pretty good to improve your melee damage whenever we're surrounded. A lot of times we are going to find ourselves right in the middle of the enemies, so this thing's going to be proccing quite a bit. And with the extra damage we're already stacking with the Bastion in our melee, when you pair it up with Centoceps, it's going to hit for a lot. But pretty much any of these would work, except for the Spirit of Gerfalcon. The Spirit of Gerfalcon is pretty much like the only one you want to avoid. And that's because our third exotic is essentially going to be a Gerfalcon, a permanent Gerfalcon that we always have on. And we're going to be able to do that thanks to a weapon with destabilizing rounds, and also the new Void Artifact perk, Volatile Marksman. When you combine these 2 perks, the uptime on volatile rounds is essentially about the same as you have with the Gerfalcon, while still keeping the same invisibility that you usually pair up with the Gerfalcon. The mod is going to give us volatile rounds whenever we do some precision hits, or whenever we get some final blows, and the perk is going to give us volatile rounds every time that we get a kill. So as long as there's enemies around that we can hit or kill, we're always going to have volatile rounds. And this is only possible because of the combination of both. Now for your Void weapon, you can pretty much go with anything that has destabilizing rounds. I was using the Repose, and you guys will see the gameplay in the background also uses the Repose, but you don't really have to use the Saddle Rifle. Anything with destabilizing rounds will work pretty well. And on your other slot, I would say Repulsor Brace works great, since it gives you a bit more survivability, since you're always going to be getting this overshield. But pretty much any other Void perk will also work here. If you guys just got an Exalted Truth this week from Trials, this one works really well, because it gets destabilizing rounds on the left column, instead of the right one where it usually is, so you can pair up with tons of Void perks, like Repulsor Brace, but also Withering Gaze, and the new one, Demoralize. And all of those are going to be fantastic. If you have a destabilizing Demoralize, I would highly advise that you try it out. It's going to be so good with this. And lastly, for your heavy weapon, this is going to be like your free slot. You can pretty much run whatever you want on this slot, but I do recommend a linear, just so you can use particle deconstruction even more, since we already have it on this build. Now moving on to the subclass, we of course are on the Prismatic Hunter. And with the super, it really doesn't matter which super you go with. You could go with Silent Squall, you could go with Shadow Shot, you could go with Soul Strike, you know, the typical PvE supers. It doesn't really affect the build. Now for your abilities though, you definitely want to be on the Gambler's Dodge, so every time that we use our Ascension, we get our melee back. For the melee, I recommend that you go with the Withering Blade. It slows, it freezes, and we also get 2 charges of it, meaning that we can use it quite often to proc the perk on our Bastion, and also use to slow and freeze targets. Overall, it's just a really good PvE melee, and it works really well with the belt. For our grenade, we are going to be on the grapple because of 2 different reasons. It has a really low cooldown, so we can use it quite often, and also because the grapple melee also counts as a charged melee. So it's going to be proccing a lot of our mods, and it also counts as a second ability for outside class items. So usually when you use an ability, you only get 1 stack, but with the grapple you actually get 2. You get 1 from the grapple itself, and a second one from actually hitting something with the grapple melee. And it's also going to benefit from the extra damage you get from the Bastion, and it's also going to proc the Bastion so it can do more damage. So it just works perfectly into our build, and it essentially gives 3rd melee. Now moving on to the aspects, the very first one we're going to have is going to be Ascension. This gives a very easy way of getting amplified, meaning that we get that damage resistance for free, and it's also going to give us an easy way of jolting just a big group of targets. And since we're also jolting targets, it can also proc our Style Executioner, allowing us to go invisible just with our class ability. Now our second aspect is of course going to be Style Executioner. This is going to add a bit of survivability by allowing us to go invisible with just a ridiculous amount of things right here. We can go invisible with our grapple melee, we can go invisible with our normal melee, we can go invisible with our class ability, we can go invisible with the volatile rounds that we're going to have all the time. There's just going to be a whole bunch of different ways that we're able to apply those debuffs to go invisible. So every time they want to go invisible, we'll be able to. Now moving on to the fragments, the first one we're going to have is going to be the Facet of Protection. This is going to give us some damage resistance whenever we are surrounded. It is 15 at base, and whenever we use our Transcendence, it turns into 25% damage resistance. This is going to be pretty good, and whenever we're in the middle of the enemies, just tanking a bunch of stuff, jolting, all that stuff, that's when it's really useful. After that, we're going to have the Facet of Solitude, and this is going to give us an easy way of applying Sever just by precision hits. That's all we got to do. Just hit a couple of precision hits, and it's going to sever whatever we're hitting, making them do 40% less damage, meaning that they're a lot less dangerous. This is mostly useful on some of the bosses, the mini bosses, the champions, just things that are very dangerous. That's where this thing really comes in clutch. And whenever you defeat that thing that is severed, it will also make you invisible, so this is another way of just applying the debuff. After that, we're going to have the Facet of Dawn. Whenever we hit something with our power melee, we're going to gain Radiant, just giving us 25% extra damage on pretty much all our weapons. Since we're going to be spamming abilities, we can proc this very often, and since we also have 3 melees, since this does proc with the grapple melee, we're essentially going to have some pretty good uptime on this, just allowing our weapons to do a little bit extra damage. After that, we're going to have the Facet of Hope, which is going to give us increased ability regen whenever we have an elemental buff. So if we have Amplified, Radiant, Bolt Charge, Devour, Overshields, Invisibility, whenever we have any of those, we're going to be regenerating our class ability faster. And since we're always going to be Amplified, this pretty much guarantees that this thing is always working over time, so we can use our class ability more and just essentially refresh the Amplified. This thing makes us have 100% uptime on the Amplified. It is amazing, and it works so well with this build, and pretty much any time that you want to use Ascension. And the last one is going to be the Facet of Sacrifice. Whenever we have an Arc, Solo, or Void buff, Ability Final Blows grant us bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. This is going to be really good since we're always going to be amplified, so this perk is always going to be giving us some extra energy for our Darkness abilities, so we can use our Transcendence a lot more often. Most of the damage that we're going to be doing is light damage, so we definitely need a bit of help when it comes to Darkness energy. And this just kind of makes it so we can get it faster, so we can actually proc our Transcendence. And once we actually proc our Transcendence, our ability regen becomes crazy, since it does stack with the Inmost Light, so we're just going to be throwing so many abilities out there. It's going to be fantastic. Now for the artifacts, the main ones you're going to need are going to be the Void ones, as was Particle Deconstruction. So you want Volatile Marksman, the one that is going to allow us to have volatile rounds pretty much all the time while using our weapon. And if you boost this ability, it becomes even better because we get class ability energy from those void detonations. Disruptor Spike's also going to be pretty good, since it's going to allow our Sever to lower the damage even more, from 40% to 50%, so they do even less damage. Next, Malignant Harvest is going to let us apply Weaken whenever we cast Volatile, and this is just really good. It essentially just adds Weaken to the build, which was something that was kind of missing from it. And the last two are going to be the big ones, Particle Deconstruction, so our Heavy and also our Bastion can do more damage, and also Void Floods, meaning that every time we defeat those weakened targets with a Void weapon, it applies Volatile to more targets, meaning that I can proc Malignant Harvest again, and it also makes a big explosion, just dealing a bunch of damage to anything that's around. These three mods right here work perfectly together, so I hope that most of you guys have these. If you don't have all three, just having these two would be enough to like keep up the volatile rounds on the weekends. You just miss out on some of those big explosions. But for the most part, if you just have these two, that should pretty much work. And lastly, let's take a look at the mods that we have on this build, but this is not really going to be anything special. I feel like the mods are pretty normal. First, for the helmet, we have Heavy Ammo Finder, Harmonic Siphon, so we can make some morphs with our primary weapon, and then Special Ammo Finder, so we can always be topped off on our heavy and our special. For the gauntlets, we're going to have heavy-handed, since we have 3 melees, might as well make as many ores as we can with them. Harmonic Loader, so we can reload our void weapon a little faster. And then lastly, Impact Induction, so every time that we do some damage with our power melees, we lower the cooldown of our grenade. So there's another thing that's going to be lowering the cooldown, allowing us to spam even more abilities. Have you gotten tired of that? Me saying that we can spam even more abilities? For your chest piece, you just have the resistances. Nothing really different here. It's just the normal resistances. For the boots, we're gonna have Absolution, Oversoul Restoration, and actually Recuperation. I don't know why I actually had better already, but yeah, Recuperation. The goats to the boots. Nothing really changed here. We're just gonna be getting tons of health back whenever we pick up orbs, as well as our abilities back. And lastly, for the class item, we're gonna have 2 utility kickstarts. So whenever we use our class ability, we can immediately get some class ability energy back by using our armor charge, and also Empire Finish, just because we can. There isn't really anything else that works here. These ones don't work with Ascension, so this is pretty much our only choice. Whenever we don't have any armor charge, if we finish something, we get some armor charge. So it kind of works into the build, but definitely not the smoothest implementation into the build. But with that, that's actually going to be the end of the build, boys. And now you pretty much have everything to use go into any activity, start spamming the abilities, and take advantage of just a huge amount of just different buffs. If I was to list them all from the top of my head, I would say Volatile, Invisibility, some damage resistance, Amplified, Weaken. You also have Sever, and I think that might be most of them. Oh no, we also have Radiant. You get the point. It's a lot of different keyboards that we can take advantage of very easily, basically by just shooting our weapons or actually using the abilities. Usually builds that have like a lot of these keyboards, they require you to play on a specific playstyle, but with this one, it's pretty easy. All you gotta do is just fire your weapon and spam abilities, which is what pretty much everyone does in PvE already, and that pretty much just lets you do a ridiculous amount of abilities. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It was definitely very fun putting it together. And I actually have another build that I'm working on to also take advantage of Ascension and the new things Ascension can do. But I'll definitely have to put that out in a couple of days. Like always, there will be a dim link in the comments below and in the description in case you guys want to check out the build. And if you guys do end up using it, come back and let me know just what you guys thought about it. If you liked it, if you not liked it, end up making any changes to it, just let me know that in the comments below. Anyways, thank you all for stopping by, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.